Hey there, it's Leona. Welcome to Zen Mindfulness Shodo. Today, we are going to practice Shodo meditation while focusing on the Kanji character for come out. So, let's begin our beautiful journey together. When you write a character, imagine a square about the size of the character that you are going to write like this. First, I'm going to write it. Then I'm going to explain the points and tips for writing the character beautifully in detail. Now I will explain. The first stroke starts from a point a bit higher than the middle of the top half of the middle vertical line, or from a point a little bit lower than the upper line of the square box. Place the brush at about a 45-degree angle like this, and once placed, lightly press towards the tip of the brush to stabilize it in place. After stabilizing the brush, aim for a point around the middle of the lower half of this middle vertical line. And move the brush downward vertically along this middle vertical line, gradually thinning it. As you can see from the line on the left side, it's a line that curves very slightly to the right, but move the brush downward in a line that appears straight and vertical. For the second stroke, begin from a point slightly to the left of the center point of the top left square. At the starting point, as with the first stroke, place the brush at about a 45-degree angle like this. And after stabilizing the brush, move it downward vertically at an angle that appears parallel to the middle vertical line, or the first stroke, gradually thinning it until it passes the middle horizontal line. When you reach this point, keeping the brush on the paper, rotate the part near the base of the brush about 45 degrees counterclockwise. Then move the brush to the right in an upward direction with a rather sharp upward curve. At this time, aim to pass through about the middle height of the first stroke. The left half is quite steeply rising to the right, but instead of continuing to rise with the same momentum, draw a rather steep upward line until it touches the first stroke. From there, ease the upward angle slightly as you continue moving the brush to the right. As for how far to move the brush, continue to the right until the first stroke is roughly in the middle. Now for the third stroke, start from a point a bit higher than the starting point of the second stroke, at a position where it will connect with the ending point of the second stroke when drawn downwards. After stabilizing the brush at the starting point, draw a line that curves slightly to the right. It's a line that curves slightly to the right, parallel to the first stroke, or slightly tilted to the right. Move the brush downward to the left while curving it slightly to the right, and gradually thinning it. At the end, lightly press towards the tip of the brush to make the ending point smoother. The ending point of the third stroke should not go lower than the lowest point of the turning point of the second stroke. If it comes to about the same height as the turning point of the second stroke, the lower part after connecting with the ending point of the second stroke might appear a bit too long. This could cause it to collide with the starting point of the final fifth stroke, or make this space too narrow. So, it's good to pay careful attention to the position of the ending point of this third stroke. For the fourth stroke, begin from below the turning point of the second stroke. Place the brush at about a 45-degree angle as before, and after stabilizing it, instead of drawing the vertical part straight down, parallel to the middle vertical line, move the brush slightly downward to the left. This makes the bottom part of the character come out a little bit wider, giving it more stability. However, if you prefer to draw this line straight down, making it more vertically aligned with the vertical part of the second stroke, You can do so. If you prefer a more stable form of the character, come out, you might want to move the brush slightly downward to the left. Move the brush down until the space above the ending point of the first stroke and the space below the lowest point of the fourth stroke appear roughly equal. At this point, just like at the turning point of the second stroke, keep the brush on the paper and rotate the part near the base of the brush, opposite to the tip, about 45 degrees counterclockwise. Then, move the brush upward and to the right in a curve at an angle parallel to the horizontal part of the second stroke. Connect with the ending point of the first stroke midway, and continue moving to the right until the first stroke, or the middle vertical line, is roughly in the middle. For the final fifth stroke, begin from around below the ending point of the third stroke. While you can draw this line straight down, parallel to the first stroke, or the middle vertical line, if you've drawn the vertical part of the fourth stroke slightly downward to the left, then draw this line downward to the right at an angle that appears symmetrical to the vertical part of the fourth stroke. This line should curve slightly to the right. Gradually becoming thicker as you move it downward to the right, similar to the third stroke. Connect it with the ending point of the fourth stroke, with the ending point slightly past this connection. At the ending point, similar to the ending point of the third stroke, lightly press towards the tip of the brush. The ending point should not go lower than the turning point of the fourth stroke. It looks better if it ends at a higher position than that. For the lower part as well, if you can write so that the two spaces between the three vertical lines look about the same width, or with the right side appearing slightly wider than the left, it will look well balanced and aesthetically pleasing. One of the key points when writing the character "come out" is to ensure that the two spaces between the three vertical lines are neither too wide nor too narrow. For example, I'm trying to write examples here, but it might be a bit difficult to see because it's small. Please bear with me, as there isn't much space here. For example, in this case, the spaces between the three vertical lines are about the same on both sides. However, if the spaces become too narrow, as in the left example, or too wide, as in the right example, the overall balance of the character as a whole doesn't look very good. In the left example, the character "come out" appears quite thin and lacks stability. The right example appears a bit too wide. However, this is in comparison to the standard form of this character. If you prefer the slimmer version of it, or the wider looking one, you should practice writing it in that style. It's ultimately a matter of personal preference. Another important point is the height of the horizontal part of the second stroke. Let me give you examples here. I'm trying to show rather extreme examples to make it easy to understand. For example, when writing the character "come out" like this, in the left example, the intersection point of the horizontal part of the second stroke is much higher than the middle of the first stroke. As a result, there's barely any difference between the starting points of the first, second, and third strokes. So the upper part has become almost flat. This part is supposed to form a mountain-like shape, but it doesn't quite achieve that in this example. Conversely, in the right example, if we assume this is about the middle height of the first stroke, the horizontal part of the second stroke intersects below that point. While this creates the mountain part, it appears as a very sharp pointed mountain. As a result, the overall center of gravity shifts too low, making the bottom part look busy. The character, come out, ends up with a very simple upper part, but with everything condensed tightly in the lower part. To improve the balance, as I mentioned earlier, I try to aim for the second stroke to intersect at about the middle height of the first stroke. Writing at this height placement tends to make the entire character appear more balanced. Lastly, as I mentioned earlier, when the two spaces between the three vertical lines don't look about the same width. Let me give you examples here, though it might be hard to see due to the small size. In the left example, the space between the right two vertical lines is clearly wider than the space between the left two vertical lines. In the right example, it's the opposite. The left space appears wider than the right space. When it looks like this, the first stroke isn't centered between the left and right vertical lines, so the overall left-right balance appears off. Why don't you try practicing while keeping these points and tips in mind? The key points and tips for writing kanji beautifully, as explained in the video, are concisely summarized in this book. Additionally, easily understandable Zen mindsets and philosophical messages are shared in this book. For those who want to practice directly in this book, I've also prepared a workbook. The writing tips and techniques are the same as in the Zen Mindfulness Shodo book. Each page allows you to practice one character. If you're interested, please see the description. When you practice with a brush, I recommend that you place a few pieces of paper under the page that you're writing on, so that the ink doesn't bleed onto the page under it. Alright, let's get started.